Yeah, thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I rise tonight to give a short recital, reporting on a recent trip that I've undertaken across some 1,500 kilometres of an area that represents about 20% of the landmass of my state of Queensland, commencing in Boulia, the Boulia Shire to the northwest, and transgressing across the Diamantina, Barcoo, Quilpie, Paroo and Balonne Shires. And these areas, Mr Acting Deputy President, of course, are home to some iconic names and descriptions well recognised by many Australians at the start of the Birdsville track or the end of the Birdsville track, depending on which side of the Simpson Desert you start or finish. It resides above probably our greatest natural gift of the Artesian Basin. It's home where the Flying Doctor was birthed simply a couple of hundred kilometres to the north. Has the Great Cooper Basin and the Great Diamantina River, and in effect on the southeastern end represents the headwaters of the Great Murray-Darling Basin. And so it's this area where about 40 or 50% of the production of beef cattle in my state is grown, where our state produces some 66% of the national herd, and so lifts its share and someone else's in terms of the contribution that makes to the national economy in agriculture and particularly in the grass-fed beef sector. This area is very seriously impacted, Mr Acting Deputy President, by the worst drought in, some say, over 100 years. Well over 95% of the area that I travelled through, at least, there was absolutely no pasture. It's not just drought affected, it's totally drought stricken. But the point that struck me, apart from the challenges of the drought, and I've spoken about that in this place on many occasions, and I want to acknowledge that our government is responding, I think, in a fair and measured way to the drought packages, and I particularly wish to congratulate the Agricultural Minister on recent adjustments that he's taken forward to the package that I think will close the gap for some who might have found the earlier packages too difficult to access, and I think will, in time, be seen as that measure that saved many hundreds, if not thousands, of producers, assuming that we get some decent break in the weather sometime soon. But the other thing that struck me, I might say, Mr Acting Deputy President, was the state of communications in this part of our great state and part of our nation. I'm embarrassed, and I've said so publicly, about the state of communications in some of those communities. For example, in the case of Boulia, you can't use a mobile phone, landlines are intermittent, as is the case of your access to the internet, and the Australian Post Office there was going broke and had to be purchased by the Shire, and the Shire now subsidise the operation of the Post Office to the tune of $100,000 every year. So imagine that if some of us in this place went back into our general electorates, or some of our colleagues from the other place went and door-knocked their electorates to tell the good citizens of those electorates that they all need to put their hand in the pocket additionally to subsidise such services that the rest of Australia takes for granted. The introduction of internet services with the NBN in the in the Boulia and Diamantina Shires is going to be subsidised at the cost of $13,600 per ratepayer. Let me repeat that for effect. Whilst we move around this place, and you can move around in the cafes of Canberra and Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and so many other centres around the country where you can access your free Wi-Fi, If you happen to be in Baduri or Stonehenge or Junda or any of the hub communities within those two major and great shires, you are about to sign off on putting $13,600 per ratepayer for the privilege to access the most basic and fundamental internet services that are available. Again, we should, each of us as a test, go and door knock a street somewhere near us in eastern Australia or in the bigger capital cities and just ask the punters there how they'd feel about putting $13,000+ each ratepayer towards providing, again, these services that we take for granted. Now, the impact of this on the lives of these people is enormous. It has an impact on their ability to conduct business, has an impact on their ability to deliver base education services to their children. In fact, a case reported to me at Birdsville, the family, the mother at least, and the 4 children have now had to move into town because they can no longer efficiently access School of the Air. It's gone. The intermittent services they get from the bandwidth prevents the children from being able to complete lessons on so many days that they could no longer persist with the issue. The medical centres out there I attended have got some state-of-the-art equipment funded in this case by the state, and I'm sure that's true for most of the states, only they can't use it. This is life-saving equipment with people there that are qualified to operate the equipment, but of course the bandwidth is not there for them to be able to upload some of the data imagery to go off to a physician in Adelaide or Brisbane so that they can guide them through the treatments that are required, in some cases life-saving treatments. So again, these are issues that I think that we should all be considering. I'm not here to lay this at a previous government or to lay it at this government, and I think the more we expose it, the more pressure there will be for this to be, from a bipartisan point of view, for us to rectify this. These people can't even conduct their businesses. We've got businesses who talk about properties there that export meat, some of the best meat in the world, grass-fed meat from the Cooper onto the plates of New York, yet they can go 3 or 4 days before they can enact business off their property because they can't access, again, a fundamental platform with respect to the use of the internet, and sometimes even their fixed telephone lines are intermittent. And even these intermittent services disappear in periods where we have wet seasons, where some of the infrastructure is affected. They can go for weeks and weeks and weeks without technicians being able to get to some of those isolated areas to restore, again, this base service. This is affecting families. I'm not a Facebook person myself, as might be known to most, but indeed these people are prevented from interacting with their larger family, their family who's away from their children who are away at boarding schools, now, might I say, having to come away for grade 7, not even waiting till grade 8. The massive impact in some families where they've got 4 children who all have to board over a lifetime. There's another $80,000 on top of the $13,500 on top of the subsidisation of the post offices and the like. So I ask everybody to take a very conscious and measured approach to this. We cannot leave these Australians behind. They have made this nation, even if some might argue that their contribution in contemporary times is not what it was 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, but anyone that doesn't understand the story of this nation, or anyone that does understand it, will understand what contribution these people who live in these isolated areas has made to the wealth of our nation. So, Mr Acting Deputy President, I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I know that this is a matter that will attract the empathy and support of the opposition, and I would expect all members of this place. And I think we need to have a debate, a conversation over the coming weeks and hopefully not much more than the coming months until we come up with a solution that will provide these people with the fundamental dignity of being able to communicate with the rest of the world.
Thank you, Senator O'Sullivan.